And very good morning to you. How you doing? It's Monday morning, the 17th of December 2018. I always do that. I'm pretty sure you know what date it is today. Few messages there. Alan White. How you doing, Alan? I'll have a look at Graham Hancock, Alan. It might be in the new year before I get to that, but I certainly will. Hi to Ian McKee. No painters in the house this week, Ian. Nobody here this week. Hi to Daniel Blackman. Are you pod today? Sorry, I've forgotten already. Please don't report me. Hi to Bobby and to Gail, who says good morning, Breda. To Curly Parm and to Michael Flynn. Michael is in Melbourne. How you doing, Michael? Yeah, I just put a gag on Twitter yesterday about identifying as Breda, a trans woman, for 3 days a week, and identifying as pod, a non-binary person, for the other 4 days. There was no drink involved, strangely enough. I've been off the drink for, well, the best part of a month now, and all the better for it. No, I was thinking out loud yesterday about how crazy the world has gone, how crazy things have gone in terms of censorship and the kind of obliteration of opinions by the big social media giants like Facebook and Twitter. And I was thinking, if I did identify as a trans woman and identified as a minority trans woman and complained that I was being victimized, I'd probably be treated better by Twitter and Facebook. Even though I'm not on Facebook, of course, these days, I'd probably be more visible on Twitter than I am now. It was just a silly thing that I said yesterday. Good morning, Johnny in Blackpool. How you doing, Mark Saunders? Merry Christmas to you too as well. How you doing, Linda Berry and Hippie Chick? Good morning. And to Guy Master Flex. Richie, are you going to get any GDL members on the show? Yeah, I probably will. Don't expect me to do... I mean, I'm going to be on every day this week. Don't think I'm not. I'm going to be on every day this week. But this time of year, getting the guests you want can sometimes be difficult, because whatever you and I might think about Christmas, for most people, it's a time when things are very much up in the air. So it'll be interesting getting guests this week. It's always, for any producer, whether it's independent, whether it's commercial, it can be difficult this particular week to do the types of shows that you want to do. Good morning to my friend in Amsterdam, 2x4 Band. Good morning, mate. Good morning to Petra Dollar, who's in Knaresborough in Yorkshire. Good morning. Yeah. So Tony Gosling is going to join me today. I love Tony. He's the presenter of the politics show on BC FM. He's a rare breed, Tony. He's a terrific journalist and always very well briefed. I think we're just going to round up what's been going on. Not so much emphasis on Brexit, because it's boring the absolute bejesus out of you, you know. I know it is. I'm well aware of it. Good morning to Venus Rising and to Susan Hayward. Good morning. It's boring the absolute bejesus. Venus Rising, the person you're asking me to consider has endorsed Ken O'Keefe, hasn't he? Despite all the information that there is that Ken O'Keefe should be in prison for years, for 20 years at least. So I think that person might very well have, it might not be in his best interest to come on my radio show, because I would have some questions for him that maybe he wouldn't be able to answer. I know, despite all the evidence that Max Egan and myself in recent times have put out about Ken O'Keefe. I mean, Ken O'Keefe, there is no greater fraud or criminal than Ken O'Keefe, who seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth. The man who over 3 years ago took over £100,000 from people. Not for the first time. O'Keefe took tens of thousands of pounds from the Ship to Gaza project and Aloha Palestine. All these wonderful projects that went tits up, but left Ken with a bag of money, of course. Anyway, I never missed a chance to rag on O'Keefe, because he is the greatest scumbag of all time. That's all I'm saying. I had no intention of talking about O'Keefe, but I've been recommended to speak to somebody who's a big fan of Ken O'Keefe. That's not good. That's not to say people are not entitled to their opinion, but with O'Keefe, there are no opinions. O'Keefe's a criminal, should be in prison. Really, should be in prison. I'd love to meet Ken O'Keefe. I'd give anything to meet Ken O'Keefe. A year or so ago, he was actually issuing physical threats against me on Facebook. Please. Give anything to meet Ken. Anyway, Tony Gosling will be on the Richie Allen Show today. I will have another guest as well. If not, we'll have an extended news roundup anyway. And I've got some interesting people provisionally booked in for the rest of the week, but I won't say anything lest something go wrong. Right? These things happen. And of course, let me just remind you, next year, hopefully by February at the latest, this little tete-a-tete, is that how you say it? Tete-a-tete, between you and I, between you and me, will be a daily thing. It'll be a 30-minute thing every day, but it'll have video and audio and graphics, right? Which it doesn't have now, but it will do. And it's not going to interfere with the live radio show. The live radio show will continue every day at 5, well, Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. and on Sunday mornings, right? So don't worry about that. But I'll be able to do this, and I'll be able to put up all lovely little graphics and stuff like that as well to support whatever it is that I'm bullshitting on about, as the case may be. A couple of interesting things today. I wish I could show you this, but like I said, in the new year, I'll be able to show it to you. Did you see Sky News overnight and the BBC? They've been reporting that Russia is using hardcore propaganda against the United Kingdom. Yeah, I'll just leave that one in the air there. Russia using hardcore propaganda against the UK, according to a top diplomat in the Foreign Office. I know, right? They've quoted sources in Latvia as well, who are saying that it's hardcore propaganda being used by the Russians and its allies, Russia and its allies, against the UK, and that Russia is using 2 Russian language television channels that are registered in London. So they've basically gone on the offensive against 2 Russian TV channels, and they've named them. One is NTV Mir, and the other one is Ren TV. They broadcast into the Baltic states, but they broadcast here as well. Ofcom, which is the broadcasting regulator here in the UK, which I'm going to be hearing quite a bit from next year. You may have heard me talk about this in the recent past. The regulator here is going to go after the independent media in 2019 at the earliest. It will be 2019. Ofcom is investigating NTV Mir Baltic over a news programme from the 2nd and 3rd of April about the Skripal fiasco. It is understood that Ofcom has yet to publish its findings on this. It's a wonderful thing. Irony is a wonderful thing. To see Sky News broadcast a story that says that Russia is using hardcore propaganda against the UK. I mean, it's crazy. The Skripal story, would you agree with me? I think you might agree. If you leave September the 11th for a minute, if we leave the 7th of July for a minute, if we leave the Charlie Hebdo attack, because that was madness, just for a minute, I think the Skripal thing is the most ridiculous load of bollocks I think we've ever been asked to believe, right? Outside of those other things, it's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? The Skripal thing. But we've just had a year of non-stop anti-Russian propaganda by the UK media. I remember speaking to you back in April, just before the World Cup, which was an unparalleled success, by the way. The Russians staged an amazing tournament. The fans that attended Russia from all over the world were treated properly. They were looked after well. They were shown a great time by the Russian cities which they travelled to and through. But before the tournament, you had the BBC giving airtime to people like John Sweeney of Panorama fame, warning people not to go to Russia, that the police there are animals, and the police will be looking for any excuse to beat up English supporters and to ruin their tournament. All this crap. How can the English media, with a straight face today, talk about Russia using news channels to propagate, for want of a better word, anti-UK propaganda. It's madness. It's madness, you know. I wonder, does senior executives at Sky News and at BBC News and Channel 4 News, do they have any humility at all? Surely some of them today will be saying, it's not a good day for us, you know. What do you think, Reggie? It's not a great day to be a Sky News executive, is it? Well, we're putting out a story complaining about Russian propaganda. Us. It's not a great day to be an executive, is it really? That's crazy, you know. Anyway, we'll leave that one there. It's crazy. It's beyond crazy. It's ridiculous. What else have I got for you here? Very brief bit of Brexit. Very brief bit of Brexit. A second referendum as the means to destroy the result of the 2016 vote where people voted to leave the EU. It's looking more and more like a second referendum is going to, will come to pass, and that it might be early in the new year. Everybody's talking about it. The Sunday newspapers yesterday were full of stories about Conservative ministers, including apparently people like Liam Fox, who is allegedly a Brexiteer. And the papers were full of stories yesterday about Conservative ministers saying, well, look, May can't get her deal through, the deal she agreed with the European Union. She can't, number one. Number two, nobody accepts a no-deal scenario. Now, this is disgraceful, right? But just leave that aside for 1 minute. So ministers are saying May can't get her deal through. Nobody will accept an exit with no deal. So therefore, why don't we give parliamentarians, why don't we give MPs a free vote on where we go next? And that opens up the possibility that MPs can now vote to schedule a second referendum. And this was always one of the scenarios that I predicted myself way back when. When the vote happened in 2016, I was surprised that Leave won the day, but it did. And I suggested this was what was going to happen. That as we got close to the actual time when the UK was supposed to leave, the government would be in a terrible state, that it could very well see the end of the UK government. But not only that, that the European Union would never accept the UK leaving, and that a second referendum was always going to be likely. So that's what's going to happen. You see, what they've done is they've managed to convince the public right across Parliament that no deal is like Armageddon when it isn't. I explained yesterday why no deal was a great thing, why we should have left at the very outset and not had 2 years of protracted bollocks, because it has been protracted bollocks of people traveling to and from Brussels, of silly negotiations. They should have just left, gone, you know, leave. And listen, you won't put any tariffs or any restrictions on our goods because we'll do it to you, and you sell more to us than we sell to you. It is as simple as that. That's how it should have went. But of course, it was being led by people like Theresa May and Philip Hammond and others, undermining David Davis, the original Brexit secretary. And the Treasury was undermining him. All the time this was being thwarted by avid Remainers, or even rabid Remainers. That's where we've gotten to now. So a second referendum looks very much like it's going to be on the cards. And you know, I was listening to the BBC today, this morning, as I do every day. You talk about propaganda. Right across the BBC radio and television news programs today, you have people talking about the possibility that we're going to run out of medicine. And they're running stories today that suppliers in the UK have stockpiled necessary medicines, generic medicines, for 6 weeks. Apparently, the government instructed suppliers and pharmacists to stockpile for 6 weeks after the 29th of March. Isn't that right? Something like that anyway. But the UK news, particularly the BBC today, was full of stories about how 6 weeks is not enough and that there's going to be a real dearth, a real vacuum, a real lack of access to vital medicines because of this Brexit scenario. So the BBC is unashamedly putting these fear porn stories in the public domain, saying that we're really screwed about, you know, the medicine situation is untenable. You know, this is dreadful. And while the BBC is doing this, the other news networks are allowing people come on and say, well, we have to have a second referendum. You see, forget the first referendum. People now know what they're voting for. People didn't know in June 2016 that we'd have no medicine and that we'd lose all this money and that we'd lose all these jobs. So therefore, we must have a second referendum. And some commentators are now saying the second referendum would actually be the first genuine referendum, because now people know what a Brexit scenario really looks like. This is dreadful bollocks, you know. And there's very little balance. There's not enough men and women coming on to these programs saying, look, this is garbage. The first referendum, people understood exactly what they were voting for. They wanted the country to be truly sovereign again, truly independent again, to make its own laws, you know, not to be bound by the fiscal policies of the European Union, not to be dragged into an ever-increasing political and military union, as is happening with the EU army and all the rest of that. People knew what they were voting for, but it couldn't be allowed, folks. I said this 1,000 times. The European Union is a major step towards a one world government. So it can't be allowed that a country can say, well, boy, we're leaving, and then we'll thrive doing our own thing. And that's what's happening. So a second referendum, despite Theresa May saying today, there's no way we're going to have a second referendum. There's a strong possibility that in the very early new year, Theresa May won't be Prime Minister anyway. So she can say what she wants. What else have we got? What else have I got to tell you? This is a horrible story. This is a horrible story. It's in the BBC today. Let me just say a quick hello to Linda, to Baba Yaga, to AU Kekovich, to Valorius, and to Joseph Pizzano, who's in Delaware, Pennsylvania. How you doing, Joseph? You're up early, my friend. Venus Rising says EU is communist, not national socialist. Of course it is. Of course it's. And the thing is, I've said it 1,000 times, but I've got to keep repeating this. Membership of the European Union is incompatible with socialism. It really is. And membership of the European Union is incompatible with nationalizing industries like steel, like transport, nationalizing the country's transport, the country's water again, the country's utilities again. You're not allowed to do that within the European Union. That's true. I know when I say it, it sounds very, very basic, very Cliff Note-ish, but it's true. So forget all this Corbyn bollocks about taking back into public ownership that which was wrongly privatized by the Tories. It ain't going to happen from within the European Union. All right. Good morning to Aaron Johnson. How you doing, Aaron? Horrible story today. Hull Hotel cancels homeless people's Christmas Day booking. Apparently, a hotel in Hull had accepted a booking for homeless people. Carl, and I've now reneged on it. Carl Simpson is the founder of the Raise the Roof Homeless Project, told the BBC that he paid nearly £1,100 for 14 twin rooms at the Royal Hotel in Hull, which is part of the Britannia Hotel Group. In a Facebook post shared by hundreds, Mr. Simpson said he was gutted. An employee at the Royal Hotel told the BBC yesterday that there was nobody available to comment. In a Facebook post, Mr. Simpson said the hotel was told what the rooms would be used for before they were booked, and he shared the hotel's booking confirmation. The reason for the cancellation is unclear. Simpson said he had been hoping to repeat the success of last Christmas when he was able to book 28 people into an Ibis hotel for 2 nights. It's a very unfortunate thing, that. Looks like a nice initiative that to get people into a hotel for Christmas, have a bit of Christmas dinner. And the booking was accepted by the hotel. This is a Britannia hotel group in Hull called the Royal Hotel, and it seems that they've reneged on the booking, which is a dreadful thing. And as of 11:20 on Monday morning, they haven't given any reason for it. I try and be a bit objective, you know, when you look at things like that. Maybe the manager of the hotel has maybe panicked, maybe. And maybe the manager of the hotel, upon realizing that the booking was made for homeless people, the manager might be thinking, Jesus, it might be difficult to get them to leave at the end of the booking period. Now, don't start shouting at me. I'm not making excuses for the hotel at all. I'm saying I'm trying to look at it from every angle. But apparently, the same man booked unfortunate homeless people into a hotel, an Ibis hotel last year, and it went brilliantly. They stayed there for 2 days. They had food, they had warmth, and at least on Christmas Day, they weren't worried about where they were going to put their heads that particular night. That's it's a tough story. That hopefully the Britannia group will realise it's dreadful publicity for them. I mean, if I was their public relations manager, I'd be straight onto them saying, "Listen, you effing morons, reinstate the booking and put on extra food and put on some music for these people, and don't be worried about it. Just honour the booking," is what I would do. Anyway, number of you I see are asking questions about the yellow vests, the Gilets jaunes protests in France, which again took place over the weekend, but didn't seem to be in as great a number as they had been previous weekends. It's very difficult. I spoke to Max Egan about this. I've talked a little bit about it on the programme. My colleague Gemma O'Doherty has talked about this on the live stream that Gemma does so well, it must be said, during the week. I don't know what to make of it. I think a lot of these movements, they start off genuine, don't they? I think they start off genuine. And when you look at the manifesto, because they do have a manifesto, there's not much in the manifesto that you couldn't or that you could disagree with. But then you see a lot of violence and cars being overturned and things being burned out, and you wonder what's going on there. You know, has the group been infiltrated in some way? Has it been taken over? Dilip there says their demands look reasonable. Yes, absolutely. 100% reasonable. But you've got to wonder about these movements, where they originate, what's really behind them. You know, that's what I'm saying. I can't say too much. I'm all in favour of people taking to the streets and protesting in great numbers. But ultimately, to take back, to ultimately, I said before, I said on one of these live streams, the worst of it is that ultimately these people go home. My biggest regret about the Occupy movement was that it wasn't supported by wider society, is that it didn't grow from hundreds into thousands, into tens of thousands, and then into hundreds of thousands, and then into millions, where ultimately you take back power. Absolutely. When you say to these people, you can't rule anymore, you can't govern, we reject your claim, that your claim to dominion over us, we reject it. We know who you are. We know who these governments are. We know who the opposition parties are. We know who you are. We know who you serve. Therefore, we're not going home anymore until you piss off. And that's ultimately where I kind of begin and end with these movements, you know. So what time are we now? 11:25. Keeping an eye on the clocks. I've got a few things to do before today's show. What else was I going to talk to you about? That's a sad story, that homeless story. Hopefully the hotel will realise it's not good publicity, reinstate the booking, and look after those people for a day or two. You know, you've been paid for it. Take the money, give them a good time, and do your bit, basically, you know. Here's one. Benjamin Netanyahu, one of the greatest psychopaths on planet Earth, a madman incarnate, the leader of the most racist, vicious apartheid state on this planet, the Israeli Prime Minister. His son has been banned from Facebook, has he? Hang on a second. Let me just, I've got to reboot the internet sometimes. I've changed my provider. Still have a few teething problems with the new provider. But Netanyahu's son has been suspended from Facebook after suggesting that all Muslims should leave Israel. Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree now, does it? His name is Yair Netanyahu. Yeah, he got a temporary ban from Facebook after a series of anti-Muslim and anti-Palestinian posts. He got a 24-hour ban suggesting that all Muslims should get out of Israel. There will not be peace here until 1, all the Jews have the land of Israel, he says, and 2, all the Muslims leave the land of Israel. I preferred the second option, said Yair Netanyahu. What a psychopath. Well, his father is a psychopath anyway. You know, I'm not laughing because I find it funny. It's just by any measure, by any reasonable assessment, Benjamin Netanyahu is a stone-cold psychopath, a madman. You know, people, some of you are saying they hate Christians more. Well, they think they're the chosen people, don't they? It is a racist state. Israel is a racist endeavor. It doesn't have a right to exist. Israel and the Israeli government is squatting and has been for decades and decades and decades now on land that doesn't belong to it. End of story. And when the Palestinians stand up and say, hang on a second, don't forget this is our land, they shoot them in the face at checkpoints erected by these psychopaths. Unbelievable. And I'm going to leave you with this, because there's a number of stories in the paper today about education. They are squatters. Israel and Israelis are squatting on land that doesn't belong to them. And it's bad enough that they're doing that, but they are murdering, falsely imprisoning children, torturing and executing the rightful people of that land when they stand up and say, hello, remember us? This is our land. We're the indigenous people of this region. We are. Now you have the Israelis saying, we'll recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. You know, what did they say? When Palestine is, I don't think they said when Palestine is recognized, but they've given an indication that they're going to recognize Jerusalem, haven't they? Isn't that right? Couple of education stories in the UK media today, which are interesting. There's 2 education stories. One of them is getting a lot of coverage. The other one, not so much coverage. One of them is a story that says teachers are struggling, never more than now, are struggling to control their students. That behavior, unruly behavior and vicious and aggressive behavior by students is off the scale. Now, teachers have been saying that for quite a while, but teachers are now saying it on a scale that is previously unthought or unimagined. Teachers are saying we can't control the students. It's basically crazy. I've talked on a program before about feral children. Again, I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. But I see them sometimes in Manchester. I see kids in the city. I see kids in South Manchester sometimes. Well, not all the time. Forget fear-mongering now. But I see kids and I think, Jesus, those kids are rough. You know? And it's not a job I would like, to be a teacher. So that particular story is getting a lot of traction in the media today. Why? Well, one of the reasons is because the state is planning a new all-out assault on the family unit in terms of taking children away from their families rather than help the poorest families in society, rather than help them with the miserable existences that they must have. And I've had experience with extreme poverty when I was younger. I really have. Not bullshit poverty, where we don't have money this week for a family outing, or we don't have money for petrol for the car. No, proper poverty. I've experienced it. Having nothing. You know, the wolves at the door, basically. You know, debt collectors. We've had that one when I was a kid, so I understand it. Miserable poverty. Rather than deal with that, which of course they don't want to deal with it, because Agenda 21, Agenda 30 is all about making us all fucking poor and making us all destitutes. So rather than deal with it, they want to introduce more sophisticated ways of taking children out of their homes, taking them away from their parents. That's what they want to do. So this story is getting an enormous amount of traction. But there's another story about education today. Because while some teachers are saying, I can't control the students anymore, it's like LA Central in the classroom, right? I'm laughing because I can imagine it. Here's a story. Other teachers are doing a great thing. Other teachers are doing their duty today. And they are saying, if I can bring it up, this thing is temperamental today. They are saying, teachers, today, that they are witnessing poverty in the classroom on a scale they never thought was possible. So some teachers are saying we're getting abused by the students. Other teachers are saying, hang on a second now. Hang on a second. We are buying them coats on a scale never seen before. Teachers share Dickensian instances of child poverty. Some teachers are buying coats for their students. Teachers have voiced fears that the Dickensian child poverty they witness in their classrooms has gotten worse. Almost 2/3 of teachers told a National Education Union survey that they see more families unable to afford winter clothes than in 2015, and around half the teachers surveyed reported holiday hunger as a growing problem. The survey of nearly 1,100 teachers in England has underlined the distressing new reality for some children amid huge concern about the rollout of the government's flagship benefit reform, universal credit. We don't have any children. We'd love to. No secret that we want to have children. I worry about, I'll be 44 on New Year's Eve. It does bother me that, you know, I think if next year we're blessed with a child, I'll be in my mid-60s when my son or daughter is maybe starting their own life in their job, in their own serious relationship. I'll be 64 then. I'd love to have a child. We'd love to have a child. And I think, what torture must the parents of children go through if they can't put a warm coat on their children's backs in 2018? What must it be like for those parents going to bed every night of the week wondering, what am I going to do? And teachers are blowing the whistle on that. They're saying that since 2015, it's gone through the roof, this sort of poverty, where they're hungry. Children are hungry in this country. And they talk about other countries. You've got actors on Sky, on the ad break, demanding money for children 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 miles away. Don't get me wrong, it's a terrible thing. But it's going on here. It's going on over the fucking road. Children don't have coats on their backs. And children are having teachers buy them coats. And while that's going on, rather than deal with that, the state wants to take those children away from their parents. And their parents are going to bed crying. Fucking crying. Crying, can you imagine it? I had an email from a mother the other day in that situation. Has got nothing to put on the table for Christmas. Nothing. And she worries that her children will be taken away from her. That's what's going on in this country. And you have ads on television with with Eton-educated fucking actors saying we have to send £5 a month because the children in Syria have nothing. Why do the children in Syria have nothing, Benedict fucking Cumberbatch? Because your coffee-nosed fucking pals organised the transfer of money and weapons to a bunch of fucking head choppers in Syria to render that country a basket case. And now you and Eddie Izzard are coming on TV asking for money for those children, when the irony is so thick you could fucking choke on it. Because the same governments responsible for the children in Syria are responsible for English children going to school hungry. How does a child deserve to go to school hungry? What man or woman deserves to be put into the situation where they have to cry themselves to sleep because their child has nothing? Hey? Bring a child into this? Madness. Children in Yemen are dying. Please send £3 a month. They're dying in England. They're not literally dying, they're dying in there. The heart and soul is being driven out of them by what's happening in this country here. I'm sorry for losing it there. I don't lose it very often, not to that level. I don't get upset like that very often. But we're all right, you know. We don't have a lot, my fiance and I, but we're not broke. We can pay the rent every month. And once a month we get to go out for something to eat. And every week there's enough to go to the supermarket and put some food on the table. Every week. We don't have any money left over to save. We're like everybody else. I've got fuck all savings. I'm 44. I've worked all my life. There's nothing if anything goes wrong, but I don't want any sympathy. I don't deserve it. We're okay. Next Tuesday, we'll be able to have something to eat. And we'll be able to turn on the central heating. And I'll be able to cuddle up on the sofa with the woman I love and not worry about too much. There are millions of people in this country that won't be able to turn on the heat because they're fucking terrified of the next time a bill comes in the letterbox. They're terrified that it'll be switched off. Before you know it, there'll be a man working for a thug working for a collection agency, knocking on their door, demanding that he's paid. Because if he's not, he'll come inside and he'll take away some of your meager personal possessions. That's the world we're living in. Nothing is going to change it, folks. As long as people believe in the two-party system or the three-party system or the four-party system, as long as people believe that there's a man, he's good, him, Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn, he's good, him, he's going to change everything. As long as they keep believing that and investing themselves emotionally in that, nothing is ever going to change. Nothing. Non-violent civil disobedience on a massive scale, supporting your neighbours, supporting them. Remember some years ago, Tom in Nottingham. Do you remember Tom? Do you remember when people turned up to prevent Tom having his house taken away from him? Do you remember that? Okay, in the end, they got the house, but they held him off for weeks. And all they needed, really, was a few more thousand people to come. I believe there was a big story in Ireland over the weekend in Roscommon. Is that right? My old pal Jim Corr was tweeting about it, where a farm that was wrongly dispossessed, people went in their numbers to stop it, to take it back from the tyrants that had wrongly dispossessed it. That's what it's going to take, folks, to stop it. not voting for the next hero of the revolution. And I'll say that till I die, you know. What are you doing about it, you big baldy bastard? Well, try and reach more and more people through the radio shows. Try and reach people who, not like you, not like yourself, but people who've not really heard of stuff like this. Try and get them to think about it. Because the more people who think about it, the more chances are that people will ultimately say, yeah, the system itself is completely corrupt and is completely unworkable. So we've got to change. Right, look, I've got a load of stuff to do. Tony Gosling is among the guests today. That's Monday's Richie Allen radio show, which is at the usual time of 5 p.m. Tony's on in the first hour. Well, there's plenty to talk about. We won't bore you to death with Brexit. I know you're sick of Brexit. I know you are. And I understand it. I accept it. I just want you to see how, but not just how, but why it's being reversed. Because that's important. People have to understand that, you know. Right. The show is always live on richieallen.co.uk. It'll be on Fab Radio 2, triggerwarning.tv, a number of different apps as well. It's live every Monday to Thursday. That's 5 o'clock in the UK. It's noon in New York City. It's 9 a.m. on the Pacific coast of America. And I know there's so many different time zones in Australia, I have no idea. And it's always on Podomatic. It's always on iTunes. Anyway. Right. Children having coats bought for them and food bought for them by teachers. Huh? I'll see you later on, eh? Bye for now. Bye.